right, everyone, welcome. This afternoon session is at the intersection of three of my most favorite topics: technology, gaming, and of course, healthcare. I am thrilled to be joined here today by Dr. Erik Johnson, founder and director of the Rehab Arcade and professor at the Tarleton State University, Mirelle Phillips, founder and CEO, Studio Elsewhere, and Attila Szantner, CEO and founder, massively multiplayer online science and adjunct professor at McGill University. Thank you. So our topic today is the healing power of games. Surprising healthcare advancements inspired by gaming. So let's start from the top. Why? Why it works? What are those mechanics of impact, data, and evidence? Mirelle, would you like to start us off, please?
Sure, thank you. So I have a neurotech company called Studio Elsewhere, and we work on the spectrum of brain health conditions, from stroke, traumatic brain injury, Parkinson's, dementia, to peak performance with professional athletes. And I came from a decade within the video game industry, and I always thought that it was so fascinating that games are essentially the one place where we volunteer our most precious commodity, which is time and attention, to take on unnecessary obstacles. And for not some type of external, traditionally reward, it is something that has to have internal mechanisms around it, which is exactly what happens in the brain. And so the application of what this means in healthcare is quite consequential in using what that framework is. You basically have an ability to apply that there are certain types of inputs that can be personalized, and they can have interactive outputs as well too. And then you can have pretty dynamic data from that, which is very valuable within healthcare.
So basically, gaming and interactive experiences can unlock something that traditional healthcare has been struggling with. Is that right? What about the systems that actually works at human level? Would you like to share your perspective, Erik?
Yeah, so I'm an occupational therapist, and one of the things that the history of our profession goes back 100 years, and we used engagement in occupation for therapeutic healing, for these spaces that we can see better outcomes. And if you fast forward 100 years, I'm in Afghanistan with a group of soldiers, and what do we use to come off the front lines to re-engage us with normality is like video games, right? We want to like decrease stress. We want to do a lot of the stuff, and we see that there's a lot of potential here, not only in the psychosocial component, but also in the hospital systems. And so with the Rehab Arcade, one of the things that we tapped into is how can we be intentional with using video games as a therapeutic medium? And so we've developed a whole big resource for people, therapists and healthcare providers, so that it takes all the guesswork out, and you can very intentionally use gaming in that capacity.
Thank you. And Attila, your work is the perfect example of how games can be a massive force for good. How games and games communities can contribute to solving real-life scientific challenges. Let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, so I'm a bit further from healthcare. I'm more close to fundamental research. So we're working on projects where we're analyzing large data sets in metagenomics or immunology, using a methodology called citizen science. Citizen science is when we invite non-scientists to contribute, to participate in the scientific process. And what was our innovation in this field, that's why I started this company 10 years ago, is to solve the recruitment and long-term engagement problems in citizen science. And what we propose to take these problems and put them into games so that they become part of games. And so we set up 2 major collaborations the last 10 years, one being EVE Online's Project Discovery, the other is with Gearbox in Borderlands 3, called Borderlands Science. And so why it works, I mean, it's a complex question, and there are different areas that I have to touch. One is why it works as an engagement tool for citizen scientists, and I think that's more or less obvious. All the components that we put together were tested and working well, so we knew from the beginning that if we don't make a big mistake, this should work, and it works beautifully. So over 8 million players contributed to these projects. Then it's a big question why it works as a tool for researchers and how researchers accepted it, and that was a longer work. But right from the beginning, researchers who were really the leaders in their respective field immediately understood the possibilities. And thirdly, why it works as a collaboration with games. And I think why we managed to make it a success is that we gave the lead to game developers, so they were always making the most important decisions of how to turn science into something that's engaging and entertaining.
All right, great. Thank you. So let's move on then and talk for a bit about personalization and salience. Adapting experiences to the individual versus the traditional one-size-fits-all kind of approach. Erik, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, so one thing that we know about individuals is that we all exist in a different plane, right? Like there's a ton of people here and we're all very different people. And so I think it's really important to understand who that human is that you're working with, first off. And then also like what motivates them. So for example, I use gaming in my therapy practice all the time based off of the needs of the person in front of me. So a great example would be, I did a lot of work with amputees, complex polytrauma, things like that. And so one of my patients, he had gotten in a really bad car accident. He was like all smashed up, and we're working on balance and his ability to be able to stand up for long periods of time. And day one, we put him in front of like a puzzle. He stood up for about a minute. We started talking about gaming and said day 2, we put him in front of a video game and he stood up for 17 minutes. Right? So that's pretty significant. And when you're looking at outcomes, like I can use this, right? I know that like, if I can be more intentional with those spaces, I can see better outcomes. And that leads us right into kind of that neuro space. And, Mirelle, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about where Erik is talking about is at the stage of rehabilitation. And so we come in at the point of the critical brain injury. So we work in the neuro ICU. So when the traumatic event has happened, those seconds, minutes, week that somebody spends in an ICU end up being the kind of consequence of everything that happens down the line. So it is the most time-sensitive, pressure-filled time to actually get in the right stimulation for the right reason. Yeah. So with this framework of neuromodulation, how you can think of this within a gaming model is we look at any part of the body as a controller. Mm-hmm. So the adaptive input, whether that's, so let's take if they were in a car accident and what they have ability with that we want to keep training is using eye gaze. So the eye gaze becomes the controller, and then what we develop is personalizations of environments that have salience, so connected to memory, that it's important to them, maybe someplace that they've been. We also use olfactory to be able to use scent. So it's using immersive interaction to help the brain create new neural pathways at the most critical time that it's necessary.
And we know those create better outcomes. Yeah, like it just is.
So it's basically you invest in that time period, and then you have what all of these downstream effects are in somebody's life.
And you have so much data and evidence on that, right? Talking about outcomes, Erik.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like tons of research out there that kind of back all this, and as Mirelle was talking about, like this isn't, just us feeling good about it. I mean, there is a lot of data to support this. Like, purposeful activity has become everything that we use in the OT space to drive better outcomes. I know that if I say, move your arm 10 times, and you do that, it's fine. But if I say, hey, I want you to empty the dishwasher, you're going to have better outcomes, because guess what? You're engaged in the things that you're going to do, or cooking, or, pick your poison,
The brain wants to be in flow. That's why, I don't know, I think the number is like 60 or 70% of gamers are playing video games to reduce stress, which is really interesting as a concept, because they physiologically are responding to something that is stressful, but it's eustress. It's basically, it's connected to well-being, so it's a different frame.
Good stress.
It's good stress, and it's good work.
Yeah.
Like that's how gamers are approaching it. This is good work to be doing. So again, like if you think about that within a healthcare, all of us are healthcare consumers. So no matter what, I mean, the global wellness economy is $7 trillion. No matter what, you are in some way investing in this one way or another. And so I just continue to think that no matter what in the future, you will continue to see how this synergizes more.
And so I'm glad you said that, because as we're talking about this micro level at the individual, right? Let's turn it the opposite way and look from the perspective of scaling and adoption. Biggest barriers at system level, right? Opportunities for the healthcare industry on one hand. Attila, do you want to share your perspective here? I mean, where you're coming from, I think you're like from that scale perspective, right?
Yeah, for us, scaling is crucial.
Yeah.
Already, because that's how citizen science works, is that you need a large enough cohorts of contributors just to be able to ensure quality of results. Luckily, scaling up worked really nicely in these projects. There are tons of stories that I could share. But to understand how substantial player contribution can be and how it scales up citizen science, what we did, I will use the example of Borderland Science. Now, Borderland Science was based on an existing citizen science project called Philo, which is one of the big successful citizen science projects out there. So what happened is we took that project and introduced that in Borderlands 3. Designers reskinned it to fit the aesthetics of the game, made some minor modifications to make it much more fun. And then we launched it inside Borderlands 3. So we have quite a good comparison. That day when we launched this minigame inside Borderlands 3, that day we collected 5 times more data than during the 10 years that researchers were running this minigame, this project. So this is kind of the scaling up that we can achieve. I would say that this is sort of the vertical scale up. So once we have a project in a game, it works beautifully. But then I was a bit naive in the beginning, because I thought that if I managed to set up one collaboration in the game industry, everybody will jump on board. That didn't happen. And now 10 years later, I'm a bit I know a bit more, let's say, and now I understand that what we ask from game developers, it's a big ask. They're too swamped to deliver, to ship the core experience, and they don't have this luxury to create something which is nice, but not part of the core gameplay. So now we're working on solving that problem, and now we're working on a platform that will be still a close collaboration with the gaming industry, but will have a much more freedom to operate, and that I think that will be a game changer.
Gotcha. Thank you, Erik. Looks like
on that space, when we started out, I was the chief medical officer for Warfighter Engage, if you guys are familiar with that organization. We did a lot of work customizing game controllers and doing all these adaptations to make sure our amputee patients could play. And we got a call from Microsoft because they wanted to be more intentional with the community of people with disabilities. And so, them inviting us out, being a part of the conversation, and scaling this into a space that says, hey, we're not only going to do individuals, so, we're going to look at this to make some hardware and be intentional that the world could now become accessible to so many gamers. I mean, it was a massive leap from Microsoft to do that, because they knew that this wasn't necessarily going to make them a ton of money, but it was the right thing to do. The community of people with disabilities who are gamers is about 17% of the gaming population, right? That equals about $31 billion of opportunity if you are more intentional with how we approach gaming and how we want to kind of be on that side. And so I think that, again, there's opportunity there, but it's all about us kind of working together to make sure that we can provide it. And then I think that, we can achieve the things that we want based off of that stuff.
$31 billion, yes? Just to let that number settle.
It's a lot of money, I mean, it's an opportunity. And we're all going to be disabled at one point, And Mirelle, like you were just talking about cognition challenges, like everybody in here at some point in time, we're going to feel that.
We are feeling that right
We
now.
are feeling that, yes.
I mean, just where we're at globally is we have an extraordinary amount of issues that we don't have the appropriate infrastructure to deal with, which is going to be around neurodegenerative diseases and Parkinson's and dementia. And we're going to live longer, but we also have to be able to develop what is the infrastructure to support what that brain health looks like over time. So there's I don't need to paint an overwhelming picture, but it's basically the needs are incredibly high. So then it becomes around having innovative solutions that are going to have to come from a lot of different places in order to address it too.
Yeah.
And so I came from gaming, but I'm very inspired about who I get to work with within healthcare innovation, because it is basically saying, okay, we need to get from lab to bedside well under 11 years. We need to be able to then partner to be able to scale out what that looks like. And yes, you have things that we have to deal with. You go through clinical trials, you have FDA, you have regulations. So it's a more like longitudinal. You have to be invested in, doing this for quite a lot of time, which is different than, in the entertainment world. But that means transformational solutions to incredible real-world problems.
So let's unpack that. Let's unpack the clinical, regulatory, commercial pathways. I mean, there's so much, right? How do we move from experimentation to infrastructure, as you say, as an industry?
You want me to take that one?
Any of you, go for it.
I mean, I can start with something that's, at least relevant and not the most exciting thing, but I will say that in doing this work, especially when you're doing anything that has novelty into it within healthcare, you have to make it work within clinical workflows and understand what those realities are. So one of the basic parts of the calculation of how do you get here to this actually being in in all of our healthcare experiences is that you have to be able to be working across the spectrum of nursing, OT, PT. You have to find who are the right practitioners to be able to be handling what the applications, the dosage, all of that is.
Yeah. Well, and I think to piggyback, for the gaming industry, like one of the things that we offer for developers is the opportunity to take your game. Like you don't have to do anything with your game. I can just take your game, I can tear it down and tell you exactly the therapeutic implications of your game. And whether that be cognition or physical disabilities or mental health, I think it's important for you to understand what your game can provide. And that could be like playing Diablo or Super Mario 64. Like I have research that can help support that playing your game will increase hippocampal gray matter in older adults. You don't need to know what that means, but it's amazing, right? So I think it's important to understand, like we can take the things that you've already put into place and really make an impact on the community, and it'll really benefit us all like in great ways.
This is happening
Yeah.
no matter what. This is what's happening right now. So it also is a informal invitation that for those who work within gaming, have a background, understand what these systems and mechanisms are, there just is a whole lot of impact that can be done in shaping the future about the way that we receive care, the way that we age, and also for our children as well too.
Yeah.
Attila, any thoughts on the what's next kind of?
Yeah, what's next? As I mentioned, we're working on this new platform. This is going to be primarily the central piece of this will be a primary mobile app. In 2026, I wouldn't call it a revolutionary idea, and I wouldn't even think about launching anything in the mobile space which is close to serious games. I think it's an uphill battle. It's something that you cannot win. The reason why we believe that this can be a game changer, as I mentioned, is that we are doing this with the same collaborative approach that we did our original projects with. Both our partners are in alignment with this vision. So what will happen is that they will make an effort to push players, that almost 9 million players, on this platform. And also the other thing that we're planning to do is we try to keep up the incentive loop. So you'll have a mobile app where you will have small scientific mini games. And if you're playing with these mini games, you get some sort of points. And then at the end of the day, where you're back at your PC or your console, you can exchange those points for cool in-game rewards, a shiny shotgun or a cool spaceship skin. And we hope that this will be enough motivation so that a large part of this 9 million players will decide to install this mobile app and be active on this. And if this happens, then suddenly we can open up, and that's going to be like phase 2. First of all, we'll be able to serve a much wider range of scientific teams, because we can implement new mini games and we can channel efforts of players to different research projects, and we can still tell them that, guys, you'll get the same rewards at the end of the day. And also we can open it up to other game companies who cannot commit on that level, but they would be able to commit on a level of handing out rewards or giving us artifacts and so different level of collaborations. And I think that has the potential to become one of the most important citizen science mobile apps out there.
I'm so excited about that. I cannot wait to see how it goes. Best of luck, of course. So we're at the 2 minutes mark. We have about just exactly 2 minutes left as of right now. What would it be, in just maybe a couple of words each, the main takeaway that you would like to leave the audience today with?
Oh, I guess apparently I'm going to start. I think the big takeaway from me is there's 2 things that we look at for outcomes. Like one, what does the research say, and what does your clinical application say? If both of them say the same thing, then you should do it, right? If one or the other doesn't align, then that's one thing. But if research says this works, if clinical application says it works, then we should be doing it. The outcomes are going to be great. I think that's my kind of takeaway there.
I would say that just to use this opportunity to be curious, take a step back. You probably have heard a lot around things having to do with the business side of video games. If you look at it as a medium that essentially relates to neurocognition, and what can that mean? What are the different mechanisms underneath it, why we enjoy it, and to what end? Because our world has no shortage of what the complex problems are. And there's so many areas that overlap as solutions. So I'll leave you with that.
Me, I would say that I think there's so much value that gaming can bring to society, so much value that gaming can contribute to the greater good. And when we started this project, it was a huge leap of faith from our partners. And I think it's really worth to make this leap of faith. Very interesting things can come out of these collaborations.
All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. It's been great. Very much looking forward to see what's next from the perspective of cross-industry impact. How do we take it from here?
And I just want to say thank you to iicon for having this panel, because I think it's so important personally, but I do think it's like just really impactful for the game industry.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.